All right, we got about 10 minutes before class starts. I just want to point out a few news articles. I was pretty amazed by this. So the Kentucky governor is a Democrat, and he now wants to quarantine anybody who goes to church on Easter, and he's going to send people to take license plate photographs of who goes to church and announced this on Good Friday. I'm just amazed at the political stupidity of this action. I mean, I think he said most churches are closed anyway. Boy, this is, I think, a very classic security measure that's going to cause more harm than just letting it happen. One like this that happened about 10 years ago in Pennsylvania was a high school decided to give laptops to the students, but they were very concerned that the students might steal the laptops. So they secretly put surveillance software on the laptops so they could turn on the microphone and the camera, and then recorded what people were doing at home in their rooms, and then tried to tell their parents, your kid's up there smoking pot, or your kid is up there having sex. And then they ended up in a huge mess of lawsuits and disaster, of course, for unauthorized surveillance, which would have been 10 times worse than just letting them steal some of the laptops. And this strikes me the same way. I mean, he's going to open issues of church and state. This is probably illegal. It's going to make people mad. You know, it's like taking their guns. It's, you know, it would probably be a whole lot better to just tell them to stay home and not take harsh measures to enforce it, I would think. But anyway, that's where they're doing. They'll probably be hearing more about that. New York City has closed the schools for the rest of the academic year, which I guess means until summer. I don't know if it means, yeah, academic year I think ends in June or something. Anyway, so this is actually a popular move, and even Fauci has said you should close the schools. Scientific evidence tends to suggest that it is counterproductive to close the schools. Because what you do then is the kids find other things to do, and a bunch of parents can't go off and work in hospitals and other jobs because they have to stay home to take care of the kids. And there are certain kinds of epidemics that closing schools makes sense, but this particular kind of epidemic apparently is the type where they think closing schools will probably do more harm than good. But I don't think the scientific evidence is persuasive enough to change people's attitudes yet. Anyway, I've been waiting for this, hoping for a good antibody test, but it sounds like it's not going to happen. Chat message is coming in. Oh, good to see me. Yeah, glad to see you too. Yeah, glad to have you folks make it in. Anyway, so I was looking forward to this because I'm pretty sure I've already had the coronavirus a month or two ago. I had a bad, nasty flu, and I think that was it. But I would like to know, on the grounds that I thought I could take a test, prove that I've had it, now I'm immune, then I can go to work, teach, and not bother to be careful and all that jazz. And a bunch of people would like to do that. If they could prove there's a population of people that are immune, they could now start working again. But apparently it's not that simple at all. These tests are not very accurate. There are many different kinds. They're hard to make. It sounds like it's just going to be more of a mess, where the tests will roll out, but they won't be very good. They won't really prove that you're immune. The ones in Britain they tried to roll out had a success rate of like 60%, so it's hardly any better than flipping a coin. Anyway, apparently these things are not going to greatly help anybody. The only thing about them is if you administer them to a large part of the population, you can get some sort of measure as to whether things are getting better or worse or not. But they're not like I was hoping, that you could get some kind of certificate proving you're immune and then be free from the isolation. It's not going to be that good at all, apparently. So what just happened in Wisconsin is unbelievable. They are under an official stay-at-home order, so they are not supposed to go out, and yet they had in-person voting, so they had to go out to vote. So that seems like a contradictory position to take, and the governor tried to prevent it, but the Republican who controls the courts and the legislature overruled it, siding apparently with Trump, who claims that Republicans can only win elections if voting is greatly suppressed. And if you actually let most people vote, Republicans would lose. Now, political scientists actually say that is not true, and other Republican leaders say in plenty of states, Republicans rely on voting by mail just as much as Democrats. But Trump seems to believe that, and the Republicans in Milwaukee appear to believe that. So and Trump certainly got in by voter suppression, not by actually winning most of the votes, but by convincing a large number of people that would have voted against him not to vote. And anyway, so the issue which Paul Krugman is talking about here is, are they going to do this again in November for the presidential election? If we have this kind of stuff happening in the presidential election, it will greatly change the election, and it is very disturbing. And as he says, you know, a lot of my liberal friends are very, very afraid that Trump will somehow rig the election, cancel the election, stay in power forever like a dictator. I think that couldn't happen. But his point, which a lot of them say, is it totally could happen. It has happened in other countries. You get a nationalist in, and then they start messing around with the election, and pretty soon they're in there for life like Putin. So I don't know. I certainly hope that doesn't happen. But what happened in Milwaukee seems very bad. And there may be more of that coming in November. One of my students asked me a month or two ago, we started having this coronavirus. He said, what about the homeless people? Well, it turns out to be a disaster. As you'd imagine, the homeless people are crammed into these shelters. They aren't very sanitary. Now they're having outbreaks. They tried to make some ridiculous thing in Moscone Center where they had tape on the floor, and each of them had like a 10 by 10 foot region of floor to sleep in, which looked insane. Now they've apparently come up with some hotel rooms for them. It is a huge problem. And as for years and years, San Francisco has been struggling with the homeless problem and not having a good solution. And now you have the coronavirus issues on top of it. So Apple and Google have partnered together to implement contract tracing. And the idea here, they haven't rolled this out yet, but apparently it's coming out soon. They're going to have an API available in the iPhone and the Android phone that makes it possible for it to tell who you've been near in an anonymous way. It will assign like an anonymous identifier to every phone. And then every time you go near another phone on Bluetooth, it will record that you were near that person. And then at some time in the future, if that person gets a test and is determined to have coronavirus, it will send out a message so that the people who have been near that person will be informed that you have been exposed. And supposedly, this will all be anonymous. It won't be tied to your name or anything. It will not go to any central server. It will not go to the government, but you will be able to know that you have been exposed, and then you might want to isolate yourself or go get a test. So it sounds pretty good. It's not something Apple or Google is going to do in their entirety. They're developing the technology, and then they're hoping someone else, like presumably the government, will write some kind of app to use the technology. So we'll see what happens with that. If a thing like that could actually work, it might be a way out of this isolation. If we're not ever going to have tests that will actually prove that any large number of us are immune, then we need to have some way to lower the risk and still be able to go to work. Or we're going to have a recession or depression that goes on for more than a year. So technology may be the way out of it. Anyway, this may be a step forward for quantum computing. It's in an early stage. A Majorana fermion has been seen. This is something that was only theoretical before. It's a way to make a pair of particles, and hopefully it will have the result of lowering the error rate in quantum computers. Quantum computers are in fact very limited right now because of the noise. In principle, a good quantum computer could break encryption and do new forms of computation. In practice, there is no hardware available at all that is good enough to really get much done in a quantum computer. We need a better kind of hardware to store the data. So here's a lot of locks are easily fooled. The smartphone locks are easily fooled by 3D printed fingerprints. And there are other ones. There was a video I had. I don't think I got time to show it to you, but the guy got a lock that claimed it was not hackable. And if anybody ever says anything is not hackable, they're idiots. If you're a good enough hacker, anything is hackable. And they had this fingerprint lock, and he found that all you had to do was rub a magnet over it and it would pop open. So there's every technology has a weak point. And if you get a smart enough hacker, they will find the weak point. So people that are educated in security never say anything is perfect. You never say anything is unhackable. What you say is something like, it resists this attack. It is strong in this way. It is better than this comparative product. Those you can say, but nothing's ever perfect. Nothing's ever unhackable. Anyway, so here you go. If you really want to make a mask, she's made a mask with an LED and device that prints up pictures and tells people to stay 6 feet away. And I said, well, you might as well have fun with it if you're going to have a mask. All right. So here we are. City College, by the way, I brought up the official page. You can get to the home page here. City College is closed. The buildings are closed throughout the entire spring semester. There will not be any more physical meetings of any of the classes. My classes, as you know, you can already do them online by Zoom, so that's what we're going to do. And in the summer, they'll be online only, and in the fall, they haven't decided yet. So you can track the official statements of the college right on the homepage. There's a link right here for Komodo virus emergency. They just kicked out the chancellor and put in a new temporary chancellor, which is apparently Diana Gonzalez. So things proceed more or less. Now, as far as this class goes, there are some important issues I should tell you. I had to adjust the schedule, of course. We had a class canceled, so we're going to have 2 more lectures, and then the final exam will come after that. Now, people will probably have noticed that your Splunk online course has quit working. If you signed up for the Splunk online course at the beginning of the semester, your 30 days is expired. And what happens when your 30 days expired, it doesn't pop up a message and say your 30 days expired. It still lets you log in. And when you try to launch the class, the videos won't play and things won't show up. And it looks like something's broken on your machine. And I had a student that spent a lot of time making new accounts and stuff, but the old Splunk cookies in the browser kept recognizing who he was and still locking him out without a good error message. So it can be very frustrating. So you don't really need the Splunk online course. You can use my archived class materials. You can email where your homework goes to get the name and password, or ask me after I'm done recording a lecture. I don't want to put it in the video, but then you can, the archived materials get you access to everything you need to finish the class. And the other thing is, I had a few students who don't have a computer strong enough to run Splunk. Now, anybody with a normal laptop can probably install Splunk on your laptop and do your homework there. But if you can't, you can just use these 2 projects, and you can use a free Google Cloud server. And these are worth extra credit if you do them. You can make use the archive material, which is fine. Now, if you want to make your own Splunk server to do hands-on projects, and you don't want to do it on your own laptop for whatever reason, your laptop is too slow, you don't really own it, or the hard drive is full, or whatever problem you have, you go here, create an account on Google, and you'll get a free Google server, which is what I have here. You just get a Linux server in the cloud, and now you can execute commands on that. So this one, you create the server and just prove that you created a server. And the next one, you just install Splunk on that server. You go to Spunk and you get a download link, a wget command. You install that software. Then you go connect in, and you go back and do. Well, now you'll have a Splunk server running, and now you go back to the modules, go to module 3 and 4, and they tell you how to download some sample data and put it on your server, and you can use that server for a year. So that's an option for anybody who doesn't have a machine they can install Splunk on. Just use a cloud server, and you'll have your own machine to use. And anybody can do it for extra credit also. And as I mentioned before, there's some projects in these modules where you play with the Buttercup Games database, which is what you have to do to get credit for doing the standard homework that Spunk gave you. But what I greatly prefer is the Threat Hunting with Splunk module here, and that's what I'll be using to demonstrate stuff today. So let's get to the slides, which are here. And I'm going to do 2 modules today and 2 modules next time. So let me get to the start here. All right, so creating reports and dashboards. These are everything we're doing here is just a matter of presentation, which is very important. I used to work as a database analyst at a financial company, and I was just all about the numbers and figuring things out. But as the longer I worked in real business, the more respect I gained for making things look pretty. You have managers that are really important, and they're in a hurry. And it's not necessarily that they're stupid, but they don't care about all the technical details. They want something they can easily understand, a simple chart with a nice clear graph, and you will go much further if you give them that kind of good material. And Splunk knows this. That's why people pay a pile of money to use Splunk. Now, you could use Elk and Elasticsearch, and you could find the facts, but you wouldn't get these beautiful reports, and they really matter. So a report is just a saved search, and it can have a list of events or statistics or a table, And you can then put it in something called a dashboard. So you can make a window that will just open up and show certain reports all the time. And that's how you create these things like you see in security operations centers, where there's just a screen on the wall showing a chart, traffic attacks right now, people who's using our system, errors right now, that sort of thing. You have to have a system to name your reports if you're going to have them, some kind of like sales report, quarterly sales revenue, that sort of thing. It's when people begin, they just give everything foolish names. But if you have a company that grows to any size, then you have to have an organized way of naming things and an organized system of shared folders and such so you can find them. So you just run a report, save it, run a search. And when you've got a search that has something interesting, you can save it as a report. And then you can give it a title and you can decide whether to let people change the time range or not on the report. And you can do other things like add it to a dashboard. And then when you view it, the report looks just like a search. It just has a list of events you found, but it can be saved and other people can run it. You can edit it and modify it, clone it and delete it, and so on. But it's more fun when you make tables and visualizations. Now let me just move this aside and let's make one. I've got one of my Splunk servers up here. Oops, in this window. Okay, here's for the Splunk server. So let's go back to just splunk.samsclass.info. These servers are available, and if you see, it asks you for name and password, use student1 and student1. There's a splunk.samsclass.info and a splunk2.samsclass.info. And these have the boss of the SOC data, what we've been using for that extra credit project. That's what I like to use. So let's start with something from the early part of the project that I've demonstrated before, where you use Acunetics. And you may remember this. Acunetics is a vulnerability scanner, and the attackers ran the vulnerability scanner and sent a bunch of packets with the word Acunetics in them, 5,009 events that went in here, and probably more. And because I don't really care about every detail, I'm going to use 1 in 100 sampling to make the query faster. So I get 200 events, and that's enough to demonstrate what I'm doing. So here's events, which are a bad guy scanning our network. So this is just a list of those 263 events. And if I wanted to save this report, I would just do save as report and give it a title like demo 10. And I'll leave the time range picker available and say save and view. And now I just have a report. It just has a pretty title, has the same events down here, and you can hit the minus sign and see them this way. And so this is only a little different than just running a query, but notice the query doesn't show up anymore. So you could give this to someone like, this week's progress report, and they would just open this and see that and not have to put in any code at all. And that's good for people who are not technical, or for regular reports where you want them to always be done exactly the same way, that sort of thing. All right, now let's take a look at tables and visualizations. I think I'll demonstrate this first and then go back to the slides. So let's go back to the search, which is here, the same search with my 263 events. And now I go to statistics. Now it's going to show you your choices here. Now there's 3 ways to do it. I could use a pivot, which we're going to use in the next chapter. I'm going to do a quick report now, and you could also use command line commands to do it, but that's of course not the most popular way, especially for beginners. And the whole reason, like I say, people love Splunk is you really can just use the mouse and click on things and choose from menus, and that's much easier to make normal things fast. So to make a table here, all right, so we're going to do, go to the events tab here and see them. And one way to do it is from these fields down here, which we've used before. So if I go down to bytes, this shows you how many bytes were sent and received in one transaction. And so any kind of numerical field like this, I have a lot of reports all ready to go. And I can do average over time, for example. And if I do that, it gives me a graph of the time and how many events happened in time ranges, so I can get an idea of when a lot of traffic went through and when very little traffic went through. All right, and I've got various kinds of charts available. I could view it that way, or this way and so on. Some of these don't make sense, but anyway, you've got various ways to display it. All right, so let's go back to the slides, and then we'll I'll keep going here. I'll do this. Now we'll do a top values report. So if I go back here to my search again, now I can go to HTTP comment. See, now the bytes is not an interesting one, but the comment is more interesting. The HTTP comment down here has 17 values, and these are perhaps more interesting. So right now, by default, it shows me the top 10, the most common ones. I could hit top values by time, and now I get a chart. I'm getting a line chart showing the top values here. And here's the one where I thought other chart types were fun. Like this is probably, I think, the most helpful one. You have nice colors so you can see different things. Like here's 200 OK. These are requests that succeeded. These are requests that were 303, some kind of error. Here's the 404, more 404 errors. Here's 500 errors, which, by the way, might be the most interesting if you're under attack, because when you do something like a successful SQL injection, you often create a 500 error in a server, and so on. Then you can see how this is really quite useful to see what's going on with different kinds of traffic. All right, so let's go back to the slides, which are here. All right, so you can edit your reports, you can create tables. So here's the 3 ways. You can take a field from the sidebar and choose a report. That's what I was doing. We'll use pivot in the next one. And you can also, of course, do it all with command line commands in the search language if you want to, but we're not going to do much of that. So you can make these tables that show how many different products have been selling, either as a table or as a chart. You can create them from the fields window like we did. You choose a field, and now you can have average, top, maximum values, rare values, whatever you like, and it makes a chart. You can make that chart look pretty in many different ways. So we did that. We made a top values report, and you can see it all over the place. You can try all these different kinds of charts to make it beautiful. And there are other adjustments. You can adjust the X and Y axis, and you can overlay it to tables. You know, they really put a lot of effort into giving you all the options to make this beautiful, to give something to your management or your customer that will make you look professional. And that really matters. Presentation really matters. You can view everything just as a table with numbers, or you can overlay the data and you can turn on something called a heat map where you color the data ranges with different colors and so on. You know, I really thought of sort of everything you could want and put it here. And another thing you've got is a dashboard where you just open a screen as soon as you connect to Splunk. Now we're using the search page mostly, but you can make the dashboard page available or even the default. And then the first thing you'll see when you open it is just a couple of charts or something sitting right there that are live data updated. And this is what you would give somebody. Let them see a dashboard, and then they never have to see individual events or type in command lines or anything. And of course, this is great. Cash registers. If you go to a cash register like McDonald's, the cash register person has like just a touch screen that says, you know, hamburger, Coke, fries. They only have a small number of choices, and they just pick off there. Now that is a database. It's running something behind there like MySQL, but it's basically a dashboard, but they're seeing there. It just presents them with a few things they can do with the database, like sell one hamburger, add a hamburger, you know, collect money. They can do just a few functions. The actual database has many things it can do, but the user only sees a limited amount of information and a limited amount of things they can do. And if you go to your Facebook page, you see your name, you see what you posted, you see what your friends are doing. That's just a report. There's a huge database behind it with everything everybody's done, but you're seeing just a small window into a small portion of that. So it's really important for usability. So you can put this thing in a dashboard, and then you'll have that report in there. So you can name your dashboard, and you can set permissions where you let people see the dashboard who are not authorized to do other things, and so on. You can put a report in a dashboard, and you can create panels. and then drag panels around in the dashboard and have several things showing up. So it's very nice. You can drag pieces around with these little bars and make your layout, and so on. There's more and more details. By the way, you can even take a dashboard and go back to the search to see the individual events in the command line if you want to. You can drill back down to the report, modify it, and come back out to the dashboard. That's another way to use it. You can copy dashboards, and the Splunk online community of users has a large forum of dashboards and plugins and tools that they create. And you can, of course, print them out as a PDF or export them and make them beautiful. And you can determine the default dashboard. So it's just right there as a button, or even the default when you first log in, so people will see the default dashboard there. So I don't know how much of that I wanted to demonstrate. Let's see, I did have creating a top values report, adding a report to a dashboard. I did get one of those going. So let's take a look at that. So if I start from visualization area chart. That's where I am. Okay, so once you have this thing, which is pretty good, I can put this in a dashboard. It's save as report. Now I could make a dashboard panel directly, but the way they did it is here. They saved it as a report first. So I'm going to call it demo 11. And then add to dashboard. And now I have to give a dashboard ID, which I'm going to call demo 11D for dashboard. And now I can view the dashboard. And there it is. So you now have this pretty thing. You don't see the command line. You just see the results. And you can export it as a PDF or print it. And you can go other places here, like set as home dashboard and delete and so on. I think I'm just going to delete it for now. All right. So that's dashboards. And there's one more section here that we're going to do today, which is pivots and data sets. And this is just another way to make a report. So you can go to this thing called Datasets, and you can create your own custom data sets and save them, but there are a few pre-generated by the system, which is what we're going to use. And these are just relationships between data that have been stored to present you with this supposedly easy panel, which I found pretty confusing with all these parts: filters, split columns, column values, and split rows, and all these options to make charts. So let's start with the demo, because I found this hard to understand from the slides and easier if you just do it. So I want to go to the search and reporting app. I'm just going to go back. Oops, all right. Let's return to the Splunk main page. All right, search and reporting. And I'll go, I don't really need a search here because this is going to give me information about the data in a different way. So I go to data sets. It offers me some other things which I don't care about right now, so I close that. And here are the data sets that exist. You get 114 of them pre-generated for this data. Now, this is just a lookup definition, which I think is not very interesting, but Splunk has a few data model options here, and that's what I'm going to use. This one here, called a sample audit, tells you some internal data about Splunk itself, which is good enough to see how this works. So I click Explore and then Visualize with Pivot. And now it runs some query, which, as you can see, takes a while. And it's going to go through all the data, which is like 700,000 or 1 million. So it's auditing all the data here. So when it's done, it's just going to show me a count here, which is not very interesting. But that's the total number of events it has audited. Now it's done 799,000 events. So if I, in filters, next to all time, I start here with the pencil. I can restrict this. I have 799,000 events. But if I go to, say, the last 4 hours, then I only have 1,025 events, and that's going to be faster for demonstration, much simpler. So let's stick with that. So that's one thing you can do, is limit the time. Now, under split rows, you can add more detail. And so let's take action and then add to table. Now, instead of just getting the total, I break it out into categories. So here's internal Splunk actions, something about a password, Splunk starting, update, and so on. All right, so that's kind of interesting. Now, I might want to get the totals. Notice I used to have the total, and now the total is gone. Up here, I can see it's 1,025, but I might want it in the chart here. So you can go to the format, and on the summary, you can choose totals. So it appears there. So now I have the total. So this is somewhat interesting. And you can make a two-dimensional chart too. What you do is I go to split columns plus, and now I can add a second item. So what I thought was good was info. And then add to table. And now I have a two-dimensional chart with the action and then info, like completed, denied, failed, and so on. And now I got totals for all that. So now I have statistics that might help me understand how well my Splunk is working. For example, actions that are canceled, actions that are denied or failed. This 17 that failed, you might wonder if something is wrong with my server, or perhaps you can detect if one of my users is making a lot of mistakes or something. Anyway, that's what it shows you. And you can also view this in many different ways. This is just a chart of numbers. Here it turns it into a graph. And here it turns it into a different kind of graph with these areas. And here's a bar chart. And here's another kind of bar chart. And then there's more exotic ones here that don't really work too well with this kind of data. I think the pie chart might work. Yeah, the pie chart kind of works. You can see passwords, search, updates. Anyway, there's some exotic ones here that I think only work on certain kinds of data set. But that's the game. You have all these options, and if you learn to use these correctly at your company, you will be a hero. There's nothing anybody likes better than a clear data visualization. It makes it easy to see what you need to see without giving you a headache. Anyway, so that's what you've seen here. You can control the time with the range there. You control the first bit of data to break the numbers up into that way. You can sort things, of course. And then you get a chart of events counting. You can put a total in at the bottom. And then you can split columns to make a two-dimensional chart where you have one category here and a subcategory there, and you have all the datas, all the totals. You can put totals in both sides, and then you'll have, a good analysis of a two-dimensional situation. So here they've got categories of games and the individual games, and these are sales in the last 7 days. So you can filter things more, of course. You can put in conditions to only see certain ones, like something that is not an accessory. You can then format it and display it as bar charts or pie charts or any of the other ones you might want. And you'll look like a champ. So you can save these pivots. You can save them as reports. You can make them so they have a time range picker and people can adjust them. You can drill down. You can point to one line and drill down and see the individual events or the individual searches that led to that one column. And that's the game. So there's also something called an instant pivot that will create it from choices you make here, choosing fields where you do not have to start from an existing data model. And then you can save that as a report and add it to a dashboard. And that's as far as I wanted to go. Nothing here was about anything new about actually searching into the data. It's just all presentation. All right. So that's what I wanted to show you about that. And I think that's probably enough. You should go ahead and do these things. And if you run out of things to do, you can do boss of the SOC. And by the way, I'll just mention it since it's where my mind has been. For some, the mayor of New Jersey got freaked out and said they need more COBOL programmers. So I decided to learn COBOL, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm going to take it to DEF CON and everything. So down here at GrimCon next week, they're considering approving this. But even if they don't do it, Pacific Hackers has already approved it. I'm going to do it in May. Anyway, if you want to, you can learn COBOL. COBOL is the I think it is the second computer language ever written for general purpose. The first was Fortran, which is what I learned when I started. And the second was COBOL, which I never used, but I heard about it. So I made a COBOL CTF, and it turns out to be pretty interesting. So you can do this. It's worth extra credit. There's a scoreboard. A few people are already up here making points. And some people think it's a dead language, but it really isn't. Like 95% of ATM swipes through a line. The reason they quit teaching it in college decades ago, and people keep thinking it's over, but there's a gigantic infrastructure running a lot of essential businesses, like financial businesses, that are running on COBOL and mainframes. And so now there's a renewed interest in trying to get more COBOL programmers out there, because the people with real experience coding this stuff are mostly in their 70s and 80s and retired by now. So anyway, you can do this CTF and learn how to do some basic COBOL programming if you like, and that's worth extra credit in any of my classes. But it's got nothing particular to do with Splunk. So if you want to stay on topic, then I would stick to this one, Boss of the Sock, where you practice using Spunk. And these ones, where you set up your own cloud Splunk server. Those are really on topic. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, and I will leave the